Hello and welcome to Politically Incorrect Knitters. My name is Pinkava, joined as always by the lovely Deplorable Knitter.
Hi everybody, thanks for joining us today.
And this week's video is sponsored by Chicken Lady Fiber Arts. You can check her out at chickenladyfiberarts.com and use our code PIKJuly20 for 20% off your order. And you can get beautiful yarns like this one named for us, the PIK colorway.
It's so very pretty. I skeined mine up and then I promptly got distracted and I have not yet knit with it.
It is beautiful yarn though.
And guys, don't forget also our buddy Cody, Odyssey Tale. We're doing a giveaway with a paperback copy of Odyssey Tale because I'm not as cool as Anne, and skein of Chicken Lady Fiber Arts Surima sock. It's a one-of-a-kind colorway, so you can't snag this particular one, but you can get others that are like it. It's very, very lovely. And to be entered, leave a comment on our video, and we are going to pick someone at the end of the month. So we'll announce it the first video in August. So there's that. And then can I show off my knitting? It's quick.
Oh, go ahead.
So I started a poncho last week. I was using yarn from Callius Designs, and it's a little bit bigger. I mean, last week I think I had like 2 rows, so obviously it's much bigger. But I was talking on the phone with Anne, and I was on an increased row, and I only increased part of the stitches, and I just have not gone back to unknit the part that I did wrong. So once I do that, this will keep flying, because I mean, right now it's just stockinette, so it's not anything exciting. But this is the Sally Ride hat kit. It's a purple and gray mohair with a gray fingering weight. So pretty. And then this is my other knitting, and it doesn't look like much yet, but this is a penguin's face. I'm in the process of working on a design by Deborah Metcalf. It's a little penguin snuggler. My parents are going to visit my new niece this weekend. It's my stepmom's son, so she is going to stay with them for 2 weeks to be with the baby and help out and stuff. And my dad is going for 1 week. And so when they leave, this will be a penguin snuggler. I will have pictures of it to show you guys. But yeah, I didn't get that far yet, but it will be done. So that's that. And oh, this is not knitting, but I got this from our gal pal, Pretty Rose, female to the bone. I have one for you guys as a giveaway. So I don't know when you're going to get that, but you'll be getting it. You'll have an opportunity to get one soon. And then
yeah, I was just watching Birdie Rose's video on Macy Gray. So she has a couple new videos out too.
Oh, cool. I heard a little bit about Macy Gray, but I haven't heard much about it. She apologized, right, for something, and now
I think she did.
They're ganging up on her, which is, you know, the MO of the left. The last thing I wanted to tell you guys about, which has nothing to do with knitting or anything, but I got this book for my kids called Little Lives Matters. It's from Brave Books, and they have books like the first one we got, we have a subscription kit, and the first one we got was written by DC Drano. If you're on Instagram, you probably have heard of him, or on Twitter. But it's called Unmuzzle Me Please, and it's about free speech. And this one, Little Lives Matter, is about little baby cub that was born with only one arm and why his life is still important and things like that. And so if you want to talk to your kids about stuff that's going on in the world it's not super easy to talk about. Like my kids saw the news about abortions and they were like, why would people kill their babies? And so these things kind of help you have a way to talk about it. And this is in no way a paid advertisement. I would love to be a Brave person, but they don't do paid advertisements, unfortunately. But I really, really love them. And after Roe v. Wade, they actually were giving these away for free. So we picked up a copy just because we love their books. So if you're a parent and you want a way to talk to your kids about like the hard issues that are kind of hard to talk about, my kids were obsessed with the first book we got in our monthly subscription. So just wanted to throw that out there for you guys. Yeah, so that's all I have to talk about.
First thing is knitting. So I finished my shawl. It's the Sagitta shawl. Handmade knits is the thing, but there it is. It is lovely. And I posted a little bit about it on Instagram, which was kind of funny. Here, focus. Because so the original shawl pattern, you have a single color and then you have fades of minis, and it was written for that. So I did not have that. I had the Patriot collection, and my idea was to fade it in different directions. That I have the red on one side and the blue on the other. So that means that I had to spend a lot of time like fudging the yarn so it works. So it's not just the white stripes on white, so, because that wouldn't really work as well. And yeah, I had a lot of fun. I think I had like 3 feet, maybe less of red yarn left. So I really played yarn chicken with that. But yeah, it is lovely.
It is very, very pretty. You did a great job.
Well, thanks. But yeah, my plan is to give that to one of the ladies who have been helping me here, like driving me around and stuff. So yeah, it's very nice.
Cool.
And also because I do have a lot of time for knitting, I did these socks. They are the Dunbrook socks by Kay Jones. So I made but there's this little cable thing down the leg. So normally, yeah, and it's a proper heel flap. So it's been a long time. I make socks, but I'm not like a sock knitter. Like it's not super common for me. But when I packed yarn for this trip, I did the full thing. At first, I had all of that lovely potions yarn that I was going to make a sweater out of. I'm like, oh, I'll bring that along. And then I'm like, no, that's silly. It's summertime. Instead, I'll bring all this sock yarn along. Now I'm sitting here like, dang it, now I have to knit through all this sock yarn. And it's yarn that I've been keeping for a while of, oh yeah, I'll do something with that. Now I have to do something with that. But it's lovely. I don't know the brand. I suspect it's German, but it's one of those variegated yarns that that there's so many different colors in it that it goes back around to being a neutral again. So I've been having lots of fun there.
Cool. Anne, if you don't want to just keep making socks, you could impose upon your people that are helping you drive around to find a yarn shop. I bet you they have some.
That's true. Though I don't know if I said this before, but one of the ladies, he's like, oh yeah, I know that you like to knit, so I have this yarn. No, it's probably acrylic. I just bought it at the big box store, but you can make something out of it. And it's less wool than I brought with me, like in my carry-on luggage, which I thought was kind of funny. But it's not wool, actually. It's kind of a bamboo cotton mix. I'm like, oh, no, wait, this is nice.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Maybe you can finish her project for her.
Maybe I could.
Cool. So do you have more, or is that what we have today?
That's all I have of knitting.
Okay. So Anne has a lot to say because she's feeling better. There's a bit more downtime than usual. So Anne has been watching all of the things. I also caught up on some of the news. So we're going to do rapid fire because there's too much. There's too much to cover in depth. So do you want to get started or?
Sure, I'll get started because there's a couple things internationally that I just want to touch on kind of on the way through. Like, for example, there are a lot of the Dutch farmers that there's a huge protest going right now because their government passed a environmental bill, which means they have to cut down their livestock by 30% and also, coincidentally sell their land to the government. So they're not happy because, this is land. Why should the government have it? Especially if this is your job. This is literal family homesteads. The Dutch are incredibly efficient farmers, so why would you take their land away from them? And this is all being pointed back to World Economic Forum and the rest of it. And there's also been German farmers and Italian farmers who have joined them in these protests, with protests of their own. So that's, big news. France, again, just to skip on quickly, France, Macron has lost majority in the, I suppose it would be called the French Parliament, that with the new wave of elections. So while he is still the president, that his party has less candidates in, and both left-wing and right-wing factions within this government have combined to get rid of vaccine passports. So that's huge.
Because when we spoke with Miss Happy Rose, I mean, she was saying that the only places you could go in France without a passport were supermarkets, pretty much, and I think that was about it, right? And so that's a big deal.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there have been quite a few protests in France about that. So yes, that is, and again, that it is a group of, again, it's not a right-wing issue. It's both right and left getting together because they are totally against this, which is awesome.
Well, I mean, more information has been coming out about vaccines in general. And so to continue to push for passports, like my governor does, is just kind of dumb at this point, because there's like proof. Quantifiable evidence that it's not working, so it makes sense.
And I wasn't even going to bring this one up, but Mark Stein just put out, he had a vaccine injury and bereavement special on GB News, talking to different people about their stories, and that was really good. And from England, also big news this week, that Boris Johnson has resigned from leader of the Conservative Party. So they're doing little runoff things. And his statement in resigning was amazing, because he gets out there and he's like, well, that I know there's some people who are going to be happy about this and some people are going to be sad. But okay, so here's the quote. I want them to know how sad I am to be giving up the best job in the world, but them's the breaks. Legitimately said that from a podium outside Downing Street. Like, yes, the greatest speeches of history, but them's the breaks.
Yeah, right up there with Winston Churchill and all of that, and them's the breaks, baby. Right.
That it's, he often talks about himself that he wants to be a Churchillian figure. And one of his, I think it was like an aide or something, who said that, he thinks of these things in very classical terms, like, yes, King Leonidas, but them's the breaks. Like, what? Well, but I don't know if he's going to try to turn this around for himself or anything, because he hasn't endorsed anybody. And the Conservatives are having like little runoff things back and forth on who the new leadership is going to be. So
interesting.
Yeah, it is. But yeah, I've been following it a little bit, but I don't know. We'll see. Big news out of Telford. So the Telford, yes.
Where's Telford?
Sorry, Telford is in England. It's in Shropshire.
Okay, cool.
Okay, sorry. Okay, so go there. So to back up a little bit, this is a specific story. So a lady called Samantha Smith, she was on GB News, and she was talking about her story and about how she had been, to euphemize her, she had been groomed and raped for 10 years since she was 5. Is this when this started? Okay. And she came on and she talked about how the police have done nothing for her. That at one point, her groomer, attacker, how you want to phrase that, was brought into the police, and she was assured that they had a stern talking to, which is definitely the way to stop crime.
Dude, that's yeah. When I'm being abused or my kid is being abused, that's what I want to hear. They had a stern talking to.
Yeah.
What's wrong with people?
Yeah. No, and it was even like, well, it's a cultural difference. What? And yeah, and it was the entire attitude that, these girls, that they're troublemakers, that they're asking for it. Like, that's not just, those are quotes. Like,
so
that's,
when you say that there's a cultural difference, the people that were perpetrating these crimes were of a different culture?
yes, that it was just another reason that this hasn't been addressed, because this has been men predominantly of Pakistani origin. Okay. And this is still going on. And she went on GB News to talk about it. So this is incredible to me. So she talks about this, and she gets home that night, and the police knock on her door, and they say, by the way, this is a follow-up because you were talking about the police on TV. And she's like, anyways, basically to bully her for speaking out about it. So the next day, the Telford inquiry comes out. They spent 3 years compiling information about this. Okay. So over a 30-year time period, over 1,000 girls have been abused in Telford, raped and abused in this town. And it's a new town in England. Like, the town's only been around 30 years. It has the highest rate of abuse in England, that it is 18.4 per 10,000 people. That's the number of girls who are abused in the town. Wow. And when the inquiry came out, the police said, wow, we're doing everything. We're so sorry. We'll get right on it. The literal day before, when you were telling one of the victims to shut up, literally the day before. Yeah. And again, no one's getting fired. Heads aren't rolling. No actual change is happening. Several of these inquiries have come out before, and the public is shocked, and the police go, doing our best.
Yeah, that's kind of crazy. No, you're not. And I know that you're still going on your things, but one of my points ties in really great with this. So if you've been watching anything lately, you've probably heard about the 10-year-old girl in Ohio that was raped and then refused an abortion. Mm-hmm. Have you heard that, Anne? Or no?
I've heard different accounts of it, that it's kind of jumping around.
Yeah, so it's a big liberal talking point, though. They just keep bringing it up, like, oh, look at, because the Roe versus Wade and these abortion laws, and this 10-year-old girl couldn't get her abortion, right? And I'm not saying that the 10-year-old girl did anything wrong. I'm saying people used her, okay? Mm-hmm. Because what's come out now is that the abuse was reported in June 22nd. The dude wasn't arraigned until July 13th. They knew who it was. Mm-hmm. They were saying that she could not get an abortion in Ohio because of their laws. She had to go to Indiana. In Ohio, you can get an abortion up to 6 weeks. She got an abortion in Indiana at 6 weeks, 3 days. Mm-hmm. So it just really feels like these people are using it as they knew beforehand, but it seems like they did these certain things to make it more sensational than it originally was. And I'm never saying that the rape of a small child is ever appropriate, but I'm saying that using it for your political gains is super awful. And the dude who perpetrated the crimes against her is an illegal from Guatemala. Right. And they knew who he was, and they did not arrest him for 3 weeks after the report until people started asking more questions and they had to answer them. Mm-hmm. So it just, I don't know, it just feels really messed up, kind of almost like your story, where like, because it's not part of the narrative, they don't want to talk about it. And now, they don't want to say who was doing it because illegals are all great. And I'm sure some illegals are fine people, but anybody who is breaking the law to come into a country and, they've already done it. They've already broken the law, and we should I don't know. You know what I'm getting at though, right, Anne? Like,
no, it is a total failure of policing because people are getting failed all over, that they're not saying you can't even be honest about who criminals are. It's like, oh, well, with the Telford case, they're like, well, we don't want any, Islamophobia, or we don't want any racist actions to come from it. It's like, first off, how demeaning. Also, how, if you have this problem in a group of people, then wouldn't you think that that group of people would want to get rid of that problem, that they would want police action, that they would want to be free of the charge of being associated with these people? But it's assumed that you are okay with rapists and that you don't want to offend the people who may be okay with rapists. That's, you would think that people, sorry, it's just so shocking to me that, that you would, for fear of some racial repercussion, that you would allow the most horrific abuse of children, is just outrageous to me.
Right. And I feel completely disgusted in the US case that they are using this 10-year-old girl's story as a reason why Roe versus Wade should not have been sent back to the states.
Right.
And I was listening to something where somebody in Ohio, I don't remember, he was a congressman or a senator or something, and he was saying, there are provisions not just for the mother's life, but for other exceptions in the Ohio bill. I'm pretty sure that a 10-year-old being raped is not going to be like, they're not going to be like, well, too bad, so sad, you have to have, like, that's what it was being made out to be. But it's the politicizing of these awful abuse cases is just unnecessary and pretty disgusting.
Right. And like, you point out this, like, okay, what's the first problem? The first problem is the rapist. Okay, the first problem is the abuser. It's like, why isn't that problem being addressed first? What would really, really help the situation? Knowing that they have legal justice for what happened to them, not just, oh, well, if you have an abortion, that makes it okay. Okay, yeah, one much bigger than the other.
Right. And not letting the guy just wander around for 3 weeks. Who else was he abusing in 3 weeks? What else was he doing that was against the law? And like I said, not everybody who comes in illegally is a lawbreaker, but people who are willing to break the law to enter our country are probably a little less likely to be like, hey, I got to follow the rules here. Right. I mean, they've already broken them to get here. So why are they going to respect us?
Yeah, definitely. And, again, it's another failure in policing. Like, new footage came out of Uvalde. No, new footage of hanging out in the hallway, using hand sanitizer. There was one, I kind of got in on clickbait a little bit, that the police officer had his phone screen, and his phone screen was the Punisher logo, and I almost lost it. But then it turned out that guy was, that he was the guy whose wife had called him because she had been shot and was bleeding, and they didn't let him go in. Okay, which is insane. Yeah. That it's not just a cowardice. It's like oh, well, we need backup. Well, we need more backup, or we're hanging out in this hallway. When the guy got hand sanitizer, so there's 2 walls there in a hallway going forward. So he was behind a wall, walked over for hand sanitizer, got his hand sanitizer, then went back to stand behind that other wall, for safety. What? Yeah. Is it like nervous drinking water, except there's actually kids being hurt?
The footage from the school in Uvalde was shocking and disgusting, and there is obviously a problem in their police department. Right? Because I don't know about you, but if my kid was in there or your kid or somebody else's kid, and I had the means to stop it, I would be going in, because I think it's something that especially happens when you're a parent. You will do anything for your kids, and you will do anything to protect innocent people. And so, yeah, the Uvalde thing, is disgusting, but it is a problem in the police department. It is still not a gun issue, no matter what people are trying to make it out to be.
Right. And
that was a huge failure in the police department, not because of gun laws.
no, exactly. And these are the people that's like, no, wait, I shouldn't interfere with this criminal action. After all, the police are here. And what are the police doing? Absolutely nothing. And so part of the early coverage with the, they're saying Punisher as your lock screen. Oh yeah, big tough buddy boy. So for those of you who don't know, the sort of Punisher comic books to a certain extent are kind of revenge porn. Like not on your girlfriend, but just like watching somebody kill bad guys a lot. The basic storyline is that Punisher was a Marine. He comes home and his family is murdered in a gang war, which leaves him with a bullet in his head. So he is going to have vengeance upon all those who harm the innocents, and he just kills everybody. So basically, this is if somebody had been walking up through an area with a Spider-Man t-shirt and somebody said, "Stop that robber. He just shot a guy." And he was just about to actually stop the guy, not the regret bit, to actually stop the guy. And somebody said, "No, don't do that. Don't do that. Again, let somebody else save him. Except you're the police. Except you're actually the police."
Yeah. It's really messed up. But speaking of comics, why don't you tell us about the new thing that's going on in the comic world? Anne has been exploding. Yes. She's so excited.
I have been. Okay, so pushing to the side massive actual failures of heroism. People who ought to have had responsibility, people who actually ought to have saved people. Okay, all of that things. Let's push it to the side for an actual cultural win over here with Eric July and his Rippaverse. So, which I know this is, well, I'll tell you what happened and everything else. So Eric July has been, so the 3 degrees of separation. Eric July has a rather decent YouTube following. He also hangs out with the Geeks and Gamers guys and the Friday Night Tights people who our friend Carrie Smith has been on their show before. So that sort of nerdy crew. So he, for a year, has been planning the launch of his Rippaverse. So you have Marvel and you have DC, and you have these comic universes where you have all these different characters and they all interact with each other and they're all in their own sort of comic canon. So he launched this past week the Rippaverse. So, and like I said, he's been planning this for over a year. He put it out there on a crowdfunding model, but the first book is already written and he's having them printed. Within the first day of announcing that the website was coming out, he had over 10,000 signups on his website. Once it was actually released, the pre-orders for his comic book were released. He had over $1 million in sales in just over 24 hours. It might have been like 30 hours, but website crashed over and over again. I got my book in the first day. I was so excited. And right now he's at over 19,000 purchases and $1,700,000.
Wow.
Yeah. And also when he first published about his comic book, that he started out with a code of ethics that he said, okay, rule 1, respect the customer. I want you to be my customer and I respect your intelligence and I respect putting out a good product. And then the other 2 was saying that that he was not going to do any time travel or any no time travel and no multiverses. So none of this, oh, well, we went too far with this plot line and we killed characters. So no, wait, now it's time travel and we fixed it and it's all back to normal. It's like, no, if something happens in a comic book, it happened. We're not messing it up. This is it. That we're not going to mess with the stakes of this. We're not going to play around with the plot line. This is the end. And also that he wasn't going to do endless reboots too. So, because it's very difficult if you walk in and you're like, okay, so I want to read Captain America comic books. Well, do you want to read the original Captain America comic books? Do you want to do the the 80s reboot? Do you want a more modern reboot? Which one, what's the origin story of Captain America that we're going with? Because isn't it all Captain America? And it's very difficult if you want to read the comics now. But he's like, no, we're keeping it simple. We're keeping it real. This is the universe and this is how we're going. And he started out too with, he just gave it's a 96, 98 page comic book he's starting out with. It's called Isom. And he starts out like, okay, so I forget Isom's real name, but he's like, basic plot is he was a superhero. He quit to go live in a ranch in Texas, and his sister calls him up, and somebody from the past has come back. Da, 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 da. And I'm sitting here, I'm like, okay, this is great. This is a storyline based in Texas. It's not going to be endless New York City. This is, real people who left. It's like, okay, so some superheroes are connected with the government. All right, we're getting the plot going. And there's a little teaser for a villain who is an outer space threat. I'm like, okay, so we're playing with all these old comic elements. And the internet, the internet's going crazy. I mean, from the conservative side in support, just plain happy. That's like, oh, good. We can, this is a new story. This is an original story. This is a story from people who respect their audience. This is a story from someone, Eric July said that he's like, this is non-political, or at least, like he didn't say that there would never be politics involved, but they're not going to, with a lot of comic books now, they're very liberal in that they're, all of the characters have the same political belief, and that's the only way that it could possibly be. And which, that the best comic book series or the best comic book storylines, because I'm less a comic book reader and more a comic book movie person, but the best plot lines are like Civil War, the conflict between, Captain America and Iron Man, which the movies didn't even like finish out. Like the conflict was all messed up and then they never resolved it, which drove me nuts. Or like I mentioned Punisher before. So there is a massive conflict in the comics between Punisher and Daredevil. Okay, they're both on the same side, and that they're very, they're out to get bad guys. But Punisher is very much kill them all, dead, and Daredevil is, hey, you got to bring them to justice. Like you have to the police have to be involved. They actually have to have their day in court. You just can't murder people. And that is a massive comic book conflict, but that makes for great writing, and it makes for a good debate, and it has people who can, parse out ideologically which side they're more for. That's awesome. You can't have that if everybody believes the same thing in your comic book.
Right.
But
well, it sounds really interesting. I've never been much into comic books, but I'm wondering about, my brother grew up loving Marvel. When we were kids in the 90s, Marvel was huge, Wolverine and all that stuff. And yeah, it sounds nice to just have something that's comic for fun and entertainment, and not because we need to have Spider-Man with a lace costume. Is it Spider-Man that they're doing that too?
yeah, well, that's another thing I could rant and rave about, because they say that this is the gay Spider-Man. So they give him like big RuPaul eye makeup and they give him a lace ruff. And I'm okay. So that's from a historical costuming standpoint, where I'm like, lace ruff isn't gay. Like historically, that's what dudes would wear, it's like, what's really gay? Dudes having sex with dudes. Lace ruff, not necessarily gay, but anyways.
Well, it's funny though, because they are stereotyping like, oh, well, what's gay? Eye makeup and lace. Well, not really necessarily. I mean
eye makeup
what's gay is him having a boyfriend.
Yeah, having a boyfriend makes him gay.
Okay, so since I've sidelined you from what you were talking about,
sorry, I did have a finishing bit on the Rippaverse. Sorry. First off, it's awesome. Go check it out if you're interested in comic books. But also, any mention of the Rippaverse on some of the biggest comic book Reddit things, they're not just deleting the post, they are banning your account. And yeah, and there's all these oh, because the Rippaverse is attached to the fandom menace, all of these right-wing haters who are racist, sexist,
Oh, so they pulled
homophobic.
out the name calling because they don't agree with their line of thinking. So therefore
Right,
he's awful.
right.
Makes sense.
And I mean, for those of you who don't know, Eric July is Black, and Isom, that his lead superhero, is Black. And one of the covers is him fighting this blonde woman who there is already fan art of because because a lot of people are really excited to see what her story is and what's going on. And it's like, oh, it's like, well, if there was one, I saw him read one, it's like, oh, well, if the main character is Black, it's woke. No. And it's like, and even if the main character was gay, and I don't know anything about this character so far, he's probably not, but if the main character was gay, that would necessarily make them woke. It's like, no, it's not that this character is Black and this character is a woman. It's that I'm sick of that being their only character traits. I'm sick of people putting that in there and not making it a decent plot in which that is a part of.
They use it as a crutch, like you said. There's no plot. They just like, oh, we need to make this woke. So now this person's trans and this one's Black and this one's gay, and now we've hit all the bases and people are gonna love us because there's representation. It can still suck.
Yeah,
it doesn't have to.
Exactly. Well, it was like that crappy Secrets of Dumbledore movie. And how they introduced the Black lady character. It's like, oh, well, she's so cool. Why is she so cool? Because the other characters say she's cool. And they're acting as if she's cool. And the camera is swinging around her like she's important and she's cool. I'm like, well, okay, she's really good at magic. That would have been interesting if I had been, but she didn't have any character traits except she's good at magic and everyone else likes her. I'm like, well, if she had a backstory, if she had reasons for me to like her, if she had, it's like, but I wasn't given that. And this was a problem. I haven't seen the Kenobi show yet, but that they had a female Black character and basically the show was all about her. And there was actually, Disney was going out and saying that people are racist because they didn't like this Black female character. And Babylon Bee put racist fan of Star Wars wishes the Black female character was more interesting.
Yeah, and it's the same thing with the Lightyear. Everybody was like, oh, you hated Lightyear because of the same-sex kiss. Maybe your movie just wasn't that good and you took away, the voice of Tim Allen, who happens to be a conservative, and I wonder why you took away his voice. And
the only man who voted for John Kasich.
Whatever. But when their woke agenda fails, they blame people for not liking it because it's woke, instead of looking at themselves and saying, hey, maybe our product isn't up to snuff. Like, right. You know what I mean? If you're not doing something well, expect it to fail.
Right.
I could bring in a model of color for my products, and then I could say to all the liberals, well, you don't like my stuff because you're racist. No, they don't like my stuff because they're liberal. There's a big difference. Like, right. People don't see that anymore.
No, and it is tokenizing people. And then again, it's like, oh, I just want to make new original characters and have them, exist in comic book world and, have fun plots and, have discussions with my friends about what's going to happen next week, like it's supposed to be.
Right. No, that's yeah.
Right. And all the things about him too, it's like, oh, well, these are just horrible racist comics. It's like, and then it's like, Eric July is Black. Oh, well, it's just about your Black friend, though. It's like, no, and listening to him talk, language warning, a lot of Geeks and Gamers guys could be pretty blue, but he is so enthusiastic and he is so his attitude is contagious that even with all this success, he's like, no, I'm going to take this money and I'm going to put it right back in. Like he put on his website, it had goals, like it was crowdfunding, even though he already had the product to ship out and already had it lined up in printers and everything. But he's like, okay, this much, this much amount, that he put in $200,000 of his own money before this. So if it had failed, it would have been bad. But at this amount, we break even. At this amount, we do this. At this amount, we're going to buy a cargo van to ship orders out easier. At this amount, all of the part-time employees are becoming full-time employees. That he is very much like no, I'm going to take this and I'm going to put it back and I'm going to get more comics and I'm going to get more out to you faster. And I'm going to put out a good quality product. Like his entire attitude is, I want you to be my customer, and I'm not, expecting that you will always, I want to give you a good product, so you want to buy more product from me. I'm not taking this for granted. And his attitude towards other people, he's one of those parallel economies guys, which I disagree with slightly, because I think you should just, get out there and compete. But he's very much a parallel economy. If the liberals are going to have their thing, then the conservatives should have their thing. And I mean, it doesn't really, my slight semantic disagreement does not matter at all, because he's just out there and killing it. So whatever. But he is very much the pie isn't fixed. We're not fighting for little pieces of the pie. The pie isn't fixed. You get out there and you be the best you can, and I'll get out there and I'll be the best I can. And we can share audiences. We're not competing or sniping or trying to take each other out. It's like, no, what's good will succeed, and everyone should be out there and be as good and as successful as they possibly can. And he's very transparent of what he's doing for his business, and he has said before that he wants to do videos about how he is doing business, so he can help and encourage other people. And if you can get tips from him on whatever you're doing, he is happy for you, enthusiastic, go. And I love his attitude, and I love how much success he's been having.
I think that something like this actually is very bad for liberals. And it's not just because he's creating something that is competing with them, but I think it's because he is highlighting their actual racist tendencies, because it's really hard to say, oh, he's a Black dude who is doing something, he is doing it well, people like it, and he is not on their page. And they don't know how to deal with that, because they live in this bubble where people are, it's based on what color they are or what their sexuality is or something, and they cannot.
Right. If you are of this group, you must believe this.
And it just highlights their racism. And this isn't exactly related, but I just saw a video this week of a white liberal woman protesting, or doing a BLM protest, and she was speaking to a Black woman who was like, no, BLM is not for me. She said, I live in a country where I'm free. You are trying to oppress me. And she said, and there's so much Black on Black crime. Why aren't you in our neighborhoods when that happens? Why is it only when a white person does something to a Black person? It's because you're trying to make this a racist thing, and it's not. And
the bigotry of low expectations.
Exactly. And it's just nuts. It really is. But I think we need to move on, because there's more, right?
Actually, I've covered a lot of it.
Yeah. Well, I've got some more.
Oh, go ahead.
Mine takes us over to Ukraine, though.
Okay.
So I was watching Tucker, and he was talking about inflation, and it all ties in. So the report just came out, and inflation is now 9.1% because we suck.
And that's reported inflation.
Yeah, it's not actual true inflation. That's what the government is telling us. So we can be sure that it's not that. It's more. But usually what happens during inflation is that wages also go up. So yeah, the money isn't worth as much, but people's wages are also going up. During the Carter years, the wages increased between 7 and 9% for most people. Right now in the US, inflation has gone up 9.1%, and they are reporting that wages have decreased. So they have gone down between 3.5% to 4.4%. So the average US household makes $87,000. So based on inflation, the average household is losing around $8,000. So it's horrible and awful. And they were talking about, why is this happening? Why is it, why is it so different than the usual inflation we see? And the reason is because we have given close to 56 billion to Ukraine. So yeah, our money isn't worth as much, and we're also not keeping it at home. So that's really not helping anything.
Right. That we're shoveling outrageous amounts of money to the Ukraine.
Yeah. And I'm not saying that we can't help Ukraine. I'm not saying that whatever, but some of the stuff I've learned is somewhat disconcerting. And it's so we just gave them, I don't know, another 40 billion. The amounts of money we are giving them is out of control, okay?
Right, just lousy amounts of money.
And Biden's saying gas prices are up because of Putin, right? Gas prices are not up because of Putin. Gas prices are up because of our inflation and all the shit they're doing. People in California are crossing the border to Mexico because gas is over $1 cheaper there.
Wow.
Because Mexico is actually helping their people keep it at a normal rate so that they can, afford to live. People aren't taking trips now.
I'm going to bet that Mexico also is not saying that they're going to release their oil reserves to people in order to catch up with demand, and then selling barrels to China.
No, they didn't. During that push where people were selling to China, they kept their own, go figure, because they're looking out for their people, which is apparently a terrible thing to do.
Right.
And the thing, okay, so like I said, I'm not against us helping Ukraine. Don't want anybody to think that I'm like a Russian rah-rah. But
I think you could, just to say, it's like, I think you could be not for the Russian invasion of the Ukraine and also be sympathetic to the people there whose countries are being attacked and all of it, and not think that we should be spending just stupid amounts of money on this. Stupid.
Right.
Stupid
And that's what I'm getting at. So we're getting all of this money to them, right? And all of these supplies and weapons, and they won't tell us where they're going or what they're doing with it. So that's a red flag. And the Czech defense minister said that they can absolutely guarantee that some of the stuff is being smuggled out of the country and sold off. So it's disconcerting that we're putting all this money into something. We have nothing to show for it. We don't know where it's going. And we know that they're selling it off. Like, that's not cool.
And considering the billions that we left in Afghanistan, the Biden funding terrorism number is got to be outrageous. And
exactly.
I don't remember the number on it, but there's talks of more money to Palestine.
Yeah, well, so, and then the other disconcerting thing about it is, everybody's like, Putin's so terrible. He's a communist. He's this, he's that. Okay, Putin's not awesome. He's not doing awesome things.
No.
But Zelensky has shut down the opposition party. He has taken over the TV, and all of their channels are propaganda. So that also makes me wonder why we're like fighting freedom and democracy there, because it's not a free democracy there. Like, no. It's just not. And everybody's
before, and there's been sides before that. It's like, before this conflict with Russia, it was like Ukraine, their government, very corrupt, and then afterwards it's a fight for democracy and be for Ukraine. It's like, look, again, I'm not saying that the Ukraine doesn't deserve to be its own little autonomous nation, okay, and that its people should be free of being shot at or harassed by enemy troops or anything like that. What he's saying is that they also have problems, and you can't just paint with a broad brush and be like, no, these are totally good and these guys are totally bad. It's like, you need to look at it.
And that's part of the thing. Everybody's talking about how terrible Russia is. Russia's horrible. They're horrible, awful people. But have you heard about any colonizing of Africa or building military bases in the Caribbean?
Is that by China?
It sure is. It's not by Russia. Nobody's talking about this, though. I didn't know it until I heard it. Mm-hmm. And China has also bought over 200,000 acres in the US, and they have bought some in North Dakota near a strategic military base and in Texas near a base where they're close enough that they can intercept radio frequency signals. Why is nobody talking about this? It's terrifying. It is terrifying, but it's not part of the deal. It's not part of the narrative, so we're not going to talk about it.
It's like, oh, well, China, why did you buy this land? Ooh.
Yeah.
It's for a secret plan later.
Oh, yeah, no, they're going to, in North Dakota, they said that they're going to do something about milling corn. I'm sure inside of whatever they use to mill corn, there's going to be big radio towers full of radio stuff and not corn. That's just me.
Exactly.
And so then the other thing that I just thought was super interesting is, so if you look at a map of the influence that each country has, US and China, we're pretty similar still. But because of what we've been doing with Ukraine and our COVID response and stuff, China is projected to outpace us pretty quickly. So everybody's like, Russia's going to get us, right? If you look at this economic power map that they have, Italy has more power than them. Italy is more likely to take over the world than Russia.
Not again.
So it's just really interesting to see how this stuff has been spun for the narrative. And I'm not saying that Russia is not doing bad things, but why aren't we looking at China? China, who's putting all kinds of money into Harvard and into buying our resources, and people should be scared of China, not Russia.
Right. And also it's sort of the, words like colonialism get tossed around, evil colonial this and evil colonial that. Well, you see, champ, what a person buys, they own. And it turns out that if you have a colonial empire and you're trying to get a foothold all around the world, and China can get there by debt, by lending money to people, which they lent to us, and it's not good if they can get money to certain politicians. There are a lot of former MPs in England, including Tony Blair, that China has paid to talk up the country, that they've had different programs where people could come into China and learn about the culture, and everything is sunshine and roses and we're all best friends. Not to mention Hunter Biden, not to mention, again, the school thing that you have, not to mention Chinese coming into American colleges and stealing new technology, and new research and different stuff like that. And all of this is going on. And then like you talked about through the Caribbean, but also Jamaica, that we talked about this probably a couple months ago now, but that they're buying up the ports in Jamaica. And the Jamaicans are like, yeah, well, we might not be under the Queen anymore. It's like, you shouldn't be worried about the Queen. The Queen is on your money. The Chinese are taking your money. You are in debt to the Chinese, and the Chinese have this funny little thing when you default on a loan, they're like, oh, we just own this now. We just own your port that we helped you build with all this money.
Yeah. And you touched on it, who's in their pocket? Oh, the Bidens, and also we're giving all this money to Ukraine, and wasn't Hunter involved in stuff in Ukraine? Right. And yeah, it's a little
the most intelligent man that Joe Biden knows, who also occasionally argues with hookers about how much cocaine he got, and it's on video and it's published on the internet. This is the guy that is sort of the cat's paw and getting deals through for money for the big guy. for the president.
And his phone was broken into by 4chan or something. 4chan is kind of like a shady internet site where the owner was like, I'm never gonna censor anything, so like weird stuff happens on there. I've never been on it, but I've heard about it. And apparently he had his father in his phone as Pedo Pete or Pedo Pete. And so it's like,
I've heard a couple conflicting reports that may be someone else's number, but yeah, there's a lot of creepy stuff on that phone.
And I will put in the thing that I just posted on Instagram because it's hilarious. It is a picture of a dude wearing a helmet with like 8,000 cameras on it, and Elon Musk put it up, and it says Hunter anytime he buys cocaine or hookers. Because seriously, there's videos of the dude constantly naked and high, and so. But yeah, anyway, the point of that is that look at where the money's coming from, to the people at the top of our country.
I know, like massive actual money laundering and actual terrorist involvement all over this administration.
Yeah, no, it's terrifying. And then I have one other point I wanted to hit on. Have you heard of Ray Epps?
Yes, I have.
I hadn't until yesterday. So for my friends,
the charming fellow who there's video of on January 6th.
There is, and actually the video of him starts on January 5th telling people to go into the Capitol. And so
Ray Epps, because nobody, well, I mean, certainly I wasn't on the ground, but it is interesting that he has told people to go into the Capitol the day before. But I believe there was really no forward plan of going into the Capitol.
No, but he sure was telling people to go into the Capitol. And, he came from Arizona to see the president speak, but he didn't actually go to the president's speech. And so we have him on tape on January 5th and January 6th telling people to go into the Capitol. And then out of all of the horrible, awful insurrectionists that were there and this January 6th trial that we have going on, he has not been detained or arrested or charged with anything. But we have video of him telling people to break into the Capitol. So, and then the New York Times just did a big puff piece on him. So what the hell is happening there?
Well, I'm sure we'll someday soon we'll see him in khakis and a blue shirt holding a sign for Patriot Front, because I don't think anyone, a member of that organization who is not a Fed, will be surprising.
Yeah, it's but it's just insane. All the stuff that they're trying to say about the people on the 6th and everything, and all this fake hearing that they've had going on and stuff. And one of the guys
that they actually have a TV producer on the staff for their fake hearings that there's no dissenting opinion in.
No, the whole thing is dumb. I mean, I think any person with a brain has figured out that it's a bunch of crap. But yeah, I want to know where Ray Epps is and why we're not concerned about what he's doing. That's what I know this week. And then one tiny little thing that I meant to mention when we were talking about abortion and everything. So you know how all the companies have come out saying that they're going to give people money to travel to different states for abortions if they need to? Well, apparently people are pushing back against that, and Dick's is in trouble. Dick's Sporting Goods is in trouble because they have offered to give people $4,000 for abortion, but they are not offering any sort of incentive or anything to people who choose to give birth. And so they're saying you can't have one and not the other. So that's all I know about it so far, but I'm hoping that we'll start hearing more of this, because it's messed up. And if you're not going to help with childcare expenses or birth expenses or anything, then you can't, it doesn't make sense that you're able to give it money for killing your baby and not for when you have one.
Right.
So
I mean, to quote a Babylon Bee again, whose company will pay for woman whose company will pay for her to kill her child begins to suspect that they don't have her best interests at heart. And also, I mean, think about it. Every time you get an abortion, you get a bonus. Like, that's shocking and also
totally
easily exploitable.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And I mean, my my second child, the first child, when I got pregnant, I happened to be choosing health insurance right after that, so I was able to get a really good plan. The
Right.
second child, we'd already chosen health insurance, so it took 5 years to pay them off.
Mhm.
And if we had gotten, $4,000 from my husband's company when I had given birth, boy, that would have helped gone a long ways to paying off their labor and delivery charges much
Mhm.
sooner. And I mean, that kid's almost 7. 7 years ago, it cost around $10,000 to give birth. And
Mhm.
I'm sure that cost has gone up exponentially since, then.
Right.
And so, yeah, $4,000 would be super helpful to new parents. But,
Right.
We only want you to kill your babies, so it's fine.
Yeah.
It's crazy stuff, Anne.
It is truly insane.
I know there was so much to say, and I don't know if you guys noticed it, but I can totally tell that Anne is feeling so much better. And I'm sure that, hey, you didn't even tell us about your field trip. Did you want to tell us a little bit about it?
I could. I can butcher all the Romanian names.
Cool.
No, that I didn't even. Yeah. I had a grand day out. Went for a hike in here. Let me look up the name because, like I said, I have. Oh, hi, Bella. Here, 1 second. First, we can say hi to this little girl. This is Bella. Bella's very pretty and very snuggly.
She's cute.
She is cute. She's kind of needy though. You want to get down? Okay, Bella.
Well, her family is gone. I would expect that she would be needy. She'd probably little off her game.
Yeah, she's pretty. Yeah, she's very active and very cute. But she's also been taught that the only time she can be on furniture is when she's on your lap. And it's pretty hot here. So she's just like, oh, hi, I'll be on your lap now. Like, get off, dog. No matter how cute she is. Anyways, so sorry, we went for a hike. I'm gonna get this wrong. It is the Chele Turzil, which is that they have this, it was in Transylvania proper, which is really cool that I'm walking around like, okay, never in my life did I actually think that I would go to Transylvania someday. Nothing that I really actively took out, nothing. It's like a trip to Mars. No, no, I legitimately never in my life did I think I'd go to Transylvania. So it's this, there's this mountain range and there's this like huge cleft in it where this hiking trail was. And it was a huge, like a rock climbing spot that there's this high spire that goes up that is this, and there's sort of a, like an erosion hole through the top of it. And that, it's a really big thing if you're able to climb through up into this thing. And anyways, absolutely stunning. You're going through, all of these little twisty roads and these little villages. And a lot of the houses in Romania are kind of cement blocky. So we're going through all of them. And that there was one, it was like a hairpin turn. And it was somebody's house and their garden. And they had a stand when they were selling like preserves and stuff in jars of them, which is really cool. Anyway, so we're driving up. And the town nearby was Turda. And so we're, bless her. Anyways, so it was really cool, just really beautiful. I mean, I put a couple pictures out on Instagram, but that it was poor Anne realizing how out of shape I was. And I really should have been prepared when they was like, okay, we're doing a hike today. And I was with a group from a local church. So it was the youth leader and it was these 4 teenagers. And 3 of the 4 knew English pretty well, but they're just chatting in Romanian amongst themselves, which is totally fine with me. I'm like, yeah, teenagers have fun, you know, I don't need to talk to you all the time. You know, they were a good group, but you know, it's like, I understand that I'm weird and y'all go on. And anyway, so it's a 3-mile hike, the side of this mountain around this little river. Like I said, beautiful, but I am dying. My shoes, I actually, the bottom of my feet were fine, but my shoes, they wore 2 holes in the back of my ankles through walking all day. So luckily they were good enough grip though, because it was sort of a rocky path, but the rocks had been worn a little bit by people stepping over them so much. And so it was a little slippery and treacherous. I'm just lucky I didn't fall on my face. And at some point there's like this metal rope on the side of the cliff where you had to hold on to it, because it was a little iffy there. So yeah, and up and down and all of these bridges back and forth, and everything is just beautiful and stunning. And I'm just like, go on without me. I'll survive.
Pick me up on the way back, right?
I know. And it's like, well, it was total of 3 miles there and back. And I was at the point at one, like, you know, my heart's beating on my chest. And I'm like, you know, if we're just going there and back, is it really worth going all the way to the end, really? And we get to the end and yay, there's sheep. And the sheep were lovely. They're in this field and they were wearing bells and it was perfect and idyllic and lovely. So I guess that was worth it. But also on the other side of that, they had these like pop-up food stands because, see, I'd never heard of this place in my life. Apparently it's a big tourist spot. So I'm like, oh, this is cool. And there was like all of these ice cream stands that weren't open yet. I'm like, why? I could have had ice cream. But anyways, hiked all the way back, didn't die. There was also a zip line there, and all the teenagers like, yeah, we're gonna go up the zip line. And I'm just like, don't worry, I'll wait at the car. And I have to do some heavy breathing. Just me taking a moment. But yeah, and there was like this whole like little gift shop camp set up, and I'm not remembering what it's called, but it's this chimney cone that's a Hungarian thing where you have this wooden block and you wrap dough around it, and then you roll it in cinnamon and sugar and you bake the whole thing. And there's people selling those and ice creams and, you know, t-shirts and wooden swords and all sorts of stuff. You could get like a little Romanian candle set with icons behind them. And yeah, it was really neat. And then afterwards, we went to visit the salt mines, which had been a salt mine since the Roman times here. Let me look up what the name is, because I'll get that wrong too, but you know, might as well. Okay, Salina Turda is what it was called, because again, Turda was the name of the town. But yeah, a salt mine since the Roman times. And the guy who was the youth pastor, he was like he's like, okay, in this area of the world, you know, like we drove past the town and he's like, and that was the unification of, that's the place where they signed the unification of Romania in 1918. And it was, I don't know, Transylvania was part of that you have Transylvania, which is a region of Romania. And he's, you know, naming off all this. He's like, in this city, and he names off, and it was this name under the Germans, and it was this name under the Romans, and here's the name in Latin, and it changed this name. And I'm just like, this is a lot of information all at once. And then, you know, he goes and rattles everything off in Romanian for everyone else. I'm like, I don't know what that meant either. But he, you know, he's a history buff, so it's really interesting because he knew who owned what throughout this time. Anyway, so the salt mines. So there are massive, these bell-shaped mines underground, and it is cold, and it's like 50 degrees underground all year round. And it is these massive arches, and if there's the slightest bit of moisture, they'll form into salt crystals and drip. So you walk in, and it's these, he told me that when he was younger, because he grew up in Romania, that it would be like a single light bulb hanging from the ceiling in the tunnel, and then like 50 feet down would be another single light bulb, so you could sneak up on each other and like scare you in the dark. And luckily they didn't have that. They had long LED lights down, and it was very much like Hoth and Star Wars, but not ice, salt. And you have these big ripples of salt into the walls, and every light that there was a little bit of moisture, so there'd be salt crystals around. And sometimes, you know, the salt crystals would drip, but sometimes they'd be at the bottom of the thing and kind of look like cauliflower, like that sort of a texture on them. And yes, I did lick a wall, I admit. Like, is it really salty? And anyways, so yeah, it was beautiful. So it's this massive, massive cavern, and it was almost as if they didn't know what to do with it, because there's like this little like a little music area, and then they put like mini golf, and they had some pool tables there and a gift shop, and they had it's like a Ferris wheel like in there, and nobody got on the Ferris wheel. I don't know if it wasn't running or if it was just whatever. Anyways, absolutely stunning, and all in the light blue LED lights, and they had pennant lights going there. And again, the one place with all the games, that half of it was smooth, and I don't know if they have to go through every once in a while and like buff it out, and the other half had the, you know, stalagmites and the drips, and it was attached, so you have the bell shape, and then you had another chamber that was bell shaped down, and there was an underground salt lake at the bottom of this. So you walked out to this little bridge, and you could hire boats, and you could go around this little area, and the water was cold and salty. Yes, I tried that too. But also, so again, we're in this party. It was 3 people to a boat, and the youth leader guy, he asked me, he's like, so have you ever rowed a boat before? I'm like, oh, well, I've kayaked before. He's like, okay, that's better than the rest of us. You're in the boat with those 2, I'll be over here. I'm like, okay. And so, and to get down to this place, there was an elevator from the main place down to sort of the game room cavern thing. But to get down to the lake, there was no elevator. There was just stairs. So it was like a 10 by 8 little tiny area. And it was a flight of stairs, was probably 10 steps. And they were steep. And there was 13 stories of this. So getting down to this area, after 3 miles of walking, I was dying. And there's barely any room on these stairs either. So like there is just enough room for you to step out of the way and let somebody else go. But there's really not any room in there at all. And, you know, so I'm like, okay, going down. Okay, fine, we're here. And again, it was a salt lake. It was just beautiful. And they had these wooden structures with LEDs and like weird sort of geometric things, and how they'd, you reflect, and the entire place would echo when you said anything because you were in a giant bell. And it was cool. But anyways, so I am not a very good boat woman, you know, female water person. And again, I am dying from way more physical exercise than I've had in ages. And it's like, okay, Anne, row a boat. And you're in charge of these 2 teenage girls, don't die or something. So I'm like rowing around, and I couldn't get the whole directional thing going because I'm challenged. I made it around the island well enough, but it was kind of pathetic. And then in going up the stairs again, I thought I was going to die. Like any of the previous mountain walks was nothing. Going up these little steps, and everything is slippery with salt, just everything. And the walls are rough, and again, salty and dirty. So I'm leaning against this wall, and it's that thing of like, I physically cannot stop here. There is no rescue. There's no nothing. I have to get up these stupid, slippery, steep wooden stairs. And it's like, you know, and Anne finally realized she wouldn't make it for the return journey, except she had to, because there's nothing about this. And then I feel bad because, you know, I'm behind on the group. So I get up there. I finally make it. I'm dying. You know, like just absolutely having a moment. And the leader guy said, hey, I waited for you. Everyone else started going up the stairs, but there's the elevator there. And I'm like, I can't do any more stairs. you go ahead, I'll whatever. So waiting in line for the elevator. And sorry, this is a terrible story, but at this point, I am drenched with sweat, just drenched and awful. And I'm standing in line for the elevator. And it's also that moment. I mean, a fair amount of people in Romania speak English, but that's not everybody. And this is a tourist spot. So I'm just kind of waiting for the elevator in a group. And somebody says something about the elevator, and I'm like, I don't know, man. Hi. And you're just having that whole thing. So finally, my turn for the elevator. I must have reeked to high heaven because everybody in that elevator was like, it was so bad. And I'm sitting like, there's nothing I could do at this point. Again, head to toe. I'm like, my breathing has barely like gotten even from the amount of stairs. And just like actually people, like a couple people like had their noses in their coats. It was that bad. And it's like, wow, to be the smelly one in a room of Europeans. Negative stereotype for the win. I'm the bad one. And it was terrible. And then I get there and I'm like, again, I feel so bad. I don't want to, let the team down. And they're all fresh and happy and running around and everything. And I'm just like, I'm here. Thank you so much for letting me come on this trip because it's an amazing day. But again, dying. And then after that, there's this long tunnel, and they had another mine, the Franz Joseph mine, that they only had one way in, so they didn't actually allow people to go into that mine, but you could just sit there and echo, and your voice would echo like 15 times. It was so cool. And that they had the equipment there, how they used to draw the massive salt blocks off the thing. And something about the horses that they learned for a while that they put the horses for 2 weeks in the mine, and then they'd bring them out and the horses would go blind because they didn't cover their eyes, that they were so used to the dark that the light would blind them.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So that was, kind of big and shocking, but yeah, so it was so cool to see and absolutely stunning. I don't know, it was funny too because the guy was pointing out, he's like, okay, so and there was a map when you came in. So, when we come in, we're like, yeah, whatever the map. And then when we come back out, we're looking at it more closely to see where we were. And he's like, oh, and this mine, I see that this mine over here isn't on the tourist thing because it was rumored that this was the mine where they would liquidate political prisoners during the communist era. I'm like, oh, well, why didn't we? Well, on one hand, you can see why they skipped it, but that could be like an interesting thing, But yeah, so it was a great day, but like I said, exhausting. And then we went to Cluj, which is the capital of Transylvania. And we went for a California burger, which excited a lot of people. I'm like, oh, good, burger and fries. Thank goodness after this day. And they had this lovely little central park that we ended up walking through because we had to park kind of far away. But yeah, beautiful, and trees and statues of people you never heard of, and little like the little little paddle swan boats in this big pond that they had. And yeah, it was, like I said, just stunning. And again, I'm still walking around going like, Transylvania. What?
Yeah, that's gotta be crazy. It sounds
Right.
like a lot of fun.
Right. Yeah. So
to do a hike and on all those stairs in one day is kind of a lot. So
it was kind of a lot. And I get that it's like this was a activity planned for bright young teenagers, but I'm just like, my legs took a couple days to recover. So,
I'm sure.
But yeah, it was amazing. Had a great day.
Cool. So hopefully next week you'll have a new story to tell us. You'll have to find an adventure between now and then.
I'll have to. I'll see how it goes.
Cool. And guys, don't forget to check out Cody Schlegel, non-woke, awesome book, Odyssey Tale. Chicken Lady Fiber Arts yarn. This is our July giveaway. So comment to be entered to win. We'll pick a winner at the end of the month.
So make sure to check out Chicken Lady. Our promo code again is PIK July 20 for 20% off your order for the month of July.
Yep, awesome. And like, comment, subscribe, follow us on YouTube, Rumble, follow Ann and I on Instagram, mostly on Instagram. And we'll see you guys next week.
Yeah, see you then.
All right, bye.
Bye.